Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha with Ice Cream Fitness here, and once again it is time for the Gear Talk with Jason Q&A. And I'm just going to skip the bicep shot today and go right into these questions. Alright, first question. Is equipoise stacked with Tren and Test Injecting a great stack for mass gain? No, I don't think this is a particularly good stack for mass gain for everybody. It certainly wouldn't be my first choice for anybody. And a lot of it would really depend on how much test you're using, because test is your real mass builder in this stack. The problem is that this is very much a dry stack, again depending on how much test you're running. Now equipoise can certainly put a lot of quality mass on you over time, but you really need to be on it for a long time to really see the kind of results you want. And part of your problem with this stack is that I find that you need usually somewhere between 12 and 20 weeks of equipoise to really get the most out of this compound in terms of what it's capable of doing. Whereas in most guys on Tren can't stand the side effects past about 8 to 10 weeks. So the stack can be problematic there. And your other issue is that, yes, some guys can bulk on Tren. Not everybody can bulk that effectively on it for a couple of reasons. One, the extra sweating and thermogenic effect from burning through the carbs when you're on it can make it difficult for some guys to get enough calories in, particularly considering that for a lot of people, trenbolone also suppresses appetite. So those two things right there can make it very difficult for some people to bulk on. Not everybody, but a lot of people. And the other issue that I would say that I've seen with it is that when you're bulking on Tren, a caloric surplus can lead to a lot more cramping. This compound is very prone to causing muscle cramps. You don't necessarily get those cramps so much when you're cutting, but when you're bulking and you're eating plenty of carbs and you're getting all that glycogen supercompensation from it, you're prone to cramping quite a bit easier. It can really mess with your training session sometimes. Now, it will make you strong as hell, but it can still mess with the training sessions. So a stack like this is really more of almost like a dry gains, almost recomposition stack, because that's where Tren shines. I don't consider Tren to be a great mass builder. It isn't, compared to a lot of other compounds, milligram per milligram. But it is the king of recomposition. It can strip fat off of you in a bulk, and it can put a little muscle on you on a cut. Or if you're at maintenance calories, it can do both at the same time. It is very good at recomposition. In fact, I would say it's the king of recomposition. But as far as this stack being a great quick size gain stack, no, it's not. Again, this is kind of almost a hardening stack. This is the kind of stack I would run for someone who wants to recomposition and gain very little body weight, or they want a quality cut. This sort of stack would work really good for that. You're going to lose fat on it easily. You're going to hold very little water depending on how much test you're running, what sort of AIs you're using. It's going to make you vascular and hard and full. This is more of a cutting stack in my opinion, but you could use it to bulk. It just wouldn't be my first choice. I would go with something like Test with an Andriol and then some other third compound potentially if you're more advanced. And then I would look at what you're specifically trying to do when assessing what that third compound you want to add to the stack is. It could be anything from some equipoise to Debol to Andriol to Masteron, Anavar, just whatever, depending on what you're trying to do is what I would use from there. But generally, in my opinion, something like Test and Andriol as a base stack is always going to put more size on you than most other stacks when you're looking at only anabolics and not adding other things in. Alright, next question. How long to wait after PCT to start cutting fat you gained during cycle? Assuming the cycle was 500 milligrams of Test intake. Alright, again, I'm not a fan of PCT or cycling, but something I'm going to point out for you guys who cycle, you need to wait to cut until you're comfortable doing another cycle, because you're going to need gear to hold onto your mass. If you've gained muscle mass using gear, and you've overeaten enough to gain body fat and you're going to need to cut, then quite frankly, when you go into a caloric deficit and you're off gear, the odds that you're going to lose a huge chunk of your gains is pretty high. So it's really on this one as a matter of when are you willing to jump back on a bunch of gear again in order to help you maintain muscle mass when you're cutting. because again, you're not going to hold on to muscle mass very easily if you're trying to cut natural after you bulked with gear. All right, next question. Why so many get hurt while running Tren as a power lifter? This is kind of an interesting question, and has been brought up before. My feeling on this has to do with the fact that Tren is partially, again, it's a dry compound. You don't really gain water weight on it. It doesn't do much. As far as I can tell, it doesn't seem to really help much with connective tissue. It doesn't lubricate joints. But it makes you strong. It gives you just as much strength, milligram per milligram, as most of the better strength compounds out there. But it doesn't do much to protect you. It doesn't give you the type of water retention and things that you need in connective tissue, in joints, and even in muscle tissue. And therefore, it leaves you potentially more prone to injuries. Because again, you're getting large amounts of strength increase, but oftentimes combined with a little bit of dryness and definitely not holding water. So that's part of the issue, and that's why I tend to recommend nandrolones over Tren for the same job, other than maybe when you're prepping for a contest as a power lifter. You need these harder androgens like this and you're trying to make weight, and you don't want to have any bloat if you're not competing in a really heavyweight class. So that's kind of the role of Tren, in my opinion, for the power lifter. And it's very, very good for that. But as far as the off season, that can be a problem unless you're stacking it with something that's going to bloat you up a lot. Now, if you're stacking it with some NPP or some D-bol or Andriol or something like that, you may not actually have this problem. It's when guys are running a little bit of test with a lot of Tren, that's when you see these injuries happen. At least in my experience. All right, next question. What's your opinion on injecting the oil from Andriol? Safe or not sterile? This is absolutely not sterile. If you're doing this, you're taking something that is intended for oral consumption. This is not sterile. You're putting a needle into a gel cap and extracting the oil to inject it. This is not sterile at all. This is basically a one-way ticket to getting an abscess or an infection. So I cannot recommend this at all. It's not a good idea. All right, last question. DECA and EQ, does it create a synergy? Aromasin, is it better than any other AI during a blast? DECA and EQ, I wouldn't say so much that it causes a synergy. And now this is an interesting question, because on forums for years and years, I remember people going on and on about this, that they felt the compounds were so similar because they were both high anabolic, low androgenic, that combining them together was a complete waste. Yet they would run high doses of one or the other, which is just absurd. Now, I would say that stacking them together for people who want a very high anabolic stack, such as maybe an off-season power lifter, or someone who is bodybuilding or something along those lines, and they don't want a bunch of androgenic side effects, it's a perfectly good combination. They're very unique compounds. They each bring their own sets of pros and cons to the table. So I see no reason at all why they can't be stacked together very effectively. And I think that in the right environment and for the right goals, they can be a very effective combination as part of your stack. Now, as for the Aromasin question, I think Aromasin is hands down the best AI to use, simply because of a number of factors. One, it has the least side effects of any that I know of. Two, it doesn't impact your health to the extent that other AIs do. It doesn't crash your HDL cholesterol like other AIs can do. Three, it doesn't inhibit your gains as much as other AIs. And there is some data on that showing its relative effects on IGF-1. And four, it's a suicide inhibitor, so therefore you don't have an estrogenic rebound after you come off of it. Now, the downside, cost and availability. I personally, right now, if I wanted to find this stuff, I can't find it at a reasonable price. Like running an appreciable amount of Aromasin, what I see available out there on the market can be just as expensive as your gear itself. So your problem is really cost and availability. It's hard to get good Aromasin, and it tends to be very expensive. And it might be different right now in the US, I have no idea, but I know that over here, it's just not very cost effective. So that is really your downside. It's a matter of, can you find legit Aromasin, and is it within your budget to use? That's really the question. But in terms of if it is an option for you, then yeah, it is the best choice in my opinion. All right, guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you next time.